This video, I'm going to once again review 3 books related to Japan or Japanese, and I'm going to try to do it and fail in 1 minute per book. The first is Millennial Monsters here by Anne Allison. This is a very interesting and very thorough examination of how Japanese products, specifically things like Pokemon, Tamagotchi, Power Rangers, etc., were imported into America, what happened in the process, and kind of what the meaning of that is, how that has affected the production, globalization, understanding of Japanese cool. I really enjoyed this book because as someone who grew up when a lot of these products were coming out, there was a time, and I know this sounds strange now, where these were not promoted as like from Japan. They kind of tried to hide that it was from Japan. I remember playing with Tamagotchi and not knowing where it came from. I'm sure you've all seen the old censorship of Japanese anime to just remove anything even Japanese related. It was a very different time and a very approach where to sell in America, you had to present things as coming from nowhere. Indeed, Power Rangers especially, I had no idea that was Japanese until I was actually an adult because they hid it so well. Looking at that kind of discussion and revisiting that media that I did enjoy as a kid in an academic perspective was great, and the book is well written. There are some times, this is an academic book, where it does get heavy on the theory, and for a casual reader that might be difficult, but Allison does a really great job here in not only doing what they need to do as an academic, which is present the proper theory, but visiting in a way that is centered around examples, so it is pretty easy to follow, and even when it gets really deep into the woods, it doesn't stay there for long, and it usually pulls back to more concrete discussions throughout. All in all, it's not like a simple quick read by any means, but it is a fairly easy read for an academic book, and if you're interested in how Japan began to enter the global market and produce that idea of, cool Japan, this is a great place to start. The second book is then Coffee Life in Japan by Mary White. This is just simply a nice, easy read. If you're interested in the history of coffee in Japan, the importance of coffee shops within the Japanese landscape, and how coffee went from, an imported drink that was weird to something that people put pride into creating. Indeed, Japanese people drink more coffee than tea, etc. now, and how for decades. It's a great history of that, and this one is, I would say, probably the easiest of all the 3 books I'm going to talk about to read. It's a quick one, but it's a thorough one, and for an academic book, it definitely does not make it hard for a reader who is not kind of familiar with that writing. And if you have any just even personal interest or enjoyment in coffee, coffee shops, etc., I can't recommend it enough. Finally, we have Gender, Language, and Ideology, Cultural Models, and Real People. This is an edited collection edited by Shigeko Okamoto and Janet Shibamoto-Smith. What this means by edited collection is that this is a book filled with short research projects written by a number of different authors. And this, in my opinion, is basically one of the best books on Japanese sociolinguistics ever written. It did come out quite a bit ago. This was published in 2004, and so it is kind of a little out of date. I would love to see an updated book with updated studies, but there isn't one, and so this still stands as one of the most impressive and thorough and interesting books on how Japanese people actually use the Japanese language that exists. That said, out of all the 3, it's probably the hardest to read. These are all academic studies. They all have the format of an academic study where they break down the methodology, they talk about the theory. So you do need to be at least comfortable or interested in reading that, but if you are, you can get a lot out of this. There's a history of how the Japanese language has developed into what it is now, including some of the gendered ideologies that have been created and propagated over the last few hundred years. Yes, I mean created. The book will show you how a lot of them did not exist hundreds of years ago. There's a chapter on how characters are gendered in romance fiction. There's a chapter on the phenomenon of buriko and how in one context what is considered cute or even appropriate is considered buriko in another. There's a chapter on how farm women in Ibaraki talk to each other. There's a chapter on how lesbians in bars talk to each other. There's even a chapter on how girls and boys in a secondary school, a middle school, alter the use of pronouns as they move between social groups and interact with one another. It is a fantastically interesting book if you are interested in Japanese sociolinguistics, and again, if you are comfortable reading academic writing, it still stands as one of the best collections I think I've ever read to date. Although again, I would like to see it updated, as 20 years is a lot of time to pass, and the middle schoolers, etc., that I mentioned with the chapter would all be now, really have kids of their own. It'd be cool to see somebody put together a new version of this in the future. That's all. If you're interested in any of these, please do check them out. Please do support the authors. They've done a lot of hard work, and these are all recommends in my opinion, and I'll see you in the next video.